You need a moment, Mr. Diamond? Go ahead, take all the time you need.
I'm okay.
Bang, bang. Is that what you said?
That's what I said.
Bang. Enough time to think before you shot the other shot, Mr. Diamond? Bang. Enough time to make up your mind whether or not to pull a trigger, Mr. Diamond? Bang, bang.
Excuse me, Your Honor, may we proceed in due course with one question at a time rather than this summary?
Withdrawn. Bang.
You'll stand when you make an objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Bang,
Very much.
bang. Do you think there was enough time between those two bangs to make up your mind whether or not to pull the trigger a second time?
I didn't make up my mind to pull the trigger, sir.
Well, if you had done it intentionally, Mr. Diamond, as opposed to accidentally, do you think there's enough time for you to think, bang, bang, whether or not to pull a trigger a second time? Yes or no?
Yes.
Now, you are facing an extraordinary length of time in jail should you be convicted of this crime. Is that correct?
That's right.
You're facing, in fact, life without parole. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
You will never see the light of day again as a free man should you be convicted. Is that right?
Yes.
And would you do anything to save the rest of your free life under those circumstances, Mr. Diamond?
Not anything, sir.
Would you, well, would you lie, Mr. Diamond?
No.
To get out of facing the rest of your life. How old are you, Mr. Diamond?
33.
What do you figure? You got another 50, 60 years of life ahead of you?
I sure hope so.
Now, as you're sitting there today, or before this trial began, looking at the possibility of 50 or 60 years in jail, are you telling us, I'm not saying you're lying right now, but are you telling us that you wouldn't lie under those circumstances to get yourself out of that potentiality?
Asked and answered, Your Honor.
Now, if I understand your background, you're a judo or martial arts expert, correct?
Yes, sir.
You're a firearms expert, fair to say?
Small arms, specifically.
Specifically the type of weapon that was used in the death of Trudy Doyle, correct?
Yes.
You got a great degree, perhaps the finest military training on earth under the Marine Corps, correct?
I sure did.
You served in real battle under extremely stressful circumstances, correct?
Yes, sir.
Were you wounded in that war, by the way?
Yes, I was.
Did you receive a medal?
Yes, I did. I got a Purple Heart.
Fair to say you're a war hero as well, correct?
I never think of myself as that.
And you, in all of your training, the one thing that you learn in military training, in firearms training, but especially in your martial arts training, is how to get out of harm's way, right? Is that fair to say?
Sure, that's part of it.
Well, a large part of it is to get out of a bad situation and not exacerbate it, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And in getting out of harm's way, one of the things you know as an expert, and in fact teach as an expert, is to disarm an armed individual, correct?
Yes, sir.
By the way, in the martial arts, am I correct in understanding that the martial arts, amongst the self-defense methods that are practiced there, that they also teach, and you as an expert, I guess, have a high level of this, of an ability to relax under stressful circumstances. Is that fair to say?
Sure.
And wanted to, in particular, to maintain your calm and your ability to deliberate rationally under violent situations. Is that fair to say?
Violent situations?
Violent,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Now, in disarming someone with a firearm, the best way, and then this is what you're taught in any martial arts course, the best way to avoid somebody with a gun from shooting it is to get that gun out of the direction of pointing at you, correct?
That's fair to say.
And would it be fair to say that the first and primary technique in avoiding that gun is to swipe it to the side so it's not pointing at your body any longer, correct?
No, that's not. You could swipe it down.
Down would still be pointing at your legs or perhaps a vital organ of yours, correct?
Could be.
Up would be pointing at a vital organ of yours, correct?
Could be, sir. There are many different ways to disarm.
Is that correct,
someone.
Mr. Diamond, yes or no?
Yes, it is.
I understand there are many ways. That's what you were about to say, to disarm an individual, right?
Yes.
But the first, the best way to avoid being struck by a bullet is to make sure the gun isn't pointed at you, correct?
It's logical.
Right. And the best way, if it's available to you, if you can do it in certain circumstances, is to get the gun pointing in a different direction, to the side, not up or down at your body, correct? That's the best way, right?
It would depend on the circumstance.
Well, this gun with the safety off and cocked could go off accidentally at any time if someone's hand was still on the trigger, right?
Yes.
Sorry, Your Honor, this gun refers to the very Mauser in evidence, or is he talking in more hypothetical terms?
The Mauser, Your Honor, excuse me. I'm referring to your off-duty service gun, okay? The gun that was introduced in this case, that is your gun, right, the Mauser?
Yes.
Okay. People's number one, right?
Yes.
And that gun, in an uncocked, which one? In a cocked position with the safety off, if someone's finger is on the trigger, can go off at any time, accidentally or intentionally, as long as there's pressure put on that trigger, correct?
That's correct.
Right. So if it's pointed downward, it could accidentally shoot in the leg, right?
Yes.
If it's pointed upward, it's a threat to any vital organ in your body and could result in death at a person, correct?
Yes.
If it's off to the side, not pointing at you, it can't, even if it goes off, kill you or hurt you in that position, correct?
No, sir.
Is that correct or incorrect?
That's incorrect.
I'm talking about...
If the gun is fired in a small area, it could ricochet and still kill you.
You were standing in a vestibule on December 1st where there were glass plate windows surrounding you at a level of 4 feet, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let's talk about what could happen. The likelihood of a bullet hitting you, if it's upwards and it accidentally goes off and pointed at your chest, is 100%, right?
Yes.
If it's pointed at your leg, it's 100%, right?
Yes.
If I point it over there, the likelihood of it ricocheting is possible but very slim, right?
Depend on the circumstance.
Would you suggest to this jury that if the gun that you allegedly knocked from Trudy was pointed in a direction other than directly at you, if it had been withdrawn? Withdrawn. I'll rephrase. Mr. Diamond, if the gun had been pushed aside and pointed at the glass plate windows that day on December 1st, do you believe the likelihood of you being struck by a bullet would have been the same as if you had knocked it up and the gun was still pointed at you? Do you think the likelihood is the same?
You're saying it was pointed at the glass as opposed to one of the vending machines?
Anywhere. Anywhere other than directly at you, do you think the likelihood of you being struck by a bullet would have been the same?
Same, no.
Less, right?
That's right.
Bullet could go anywhere off a ricochet, right?
That's right.
If it went through the glass windows that were as low as 4 feet, it wasn't ricocheting at all, right?
Yes, sir.
But you didn't move with all your expertise to move that gun to the side, right, and grab it, correct?
That's right.
You didn't move to knock that gun to the ground, correct?
That's right.
And by the way, if you had knocked it to the ground, a blow going down with your arm is far more forceful than one going up, correct? Would you agree with me? Common sense.
Yes, sir.
So of all the possibilities, the way to disarm Miss Doyle on that day that you chose was to knock the gun in an upward direction. That's what you said, correct?
Yes, sir.
The one direction where if it had gone off accidentally as it had moved upward, if it was still in the path of your body, may have resulted in your death, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, you holstered your off-duty revolver, isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
You didn't wear it in your waistband generally, isn't that correct?
Generally.
In fact, when you practiced with Trudy Doyle, withdrawn, you stated on direct examination that in your practices with Trudy Doyle, she was practicing taking the gun from your waistband when you practiced with her. You remember that testimony?
Yes.
That was a misstatement, wasn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah. And she actually practiced, whenever she practiced with you, she practiced taking the gun from your holster, correct?
Yes, but it was a waist
Mr.
holster.
Diamond, yes or no, correct?
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but this was a standard police holster, correct?
I don't know what you mean by standard, sir.
When you as a police officer are carrying a gun, you're carrying a gun in a holster that has a special clip in it, a clip with force to hold the gun in, not entirely, but to hold it in to make it more difficult for a stranger or a criminal to lift it from you during a struggle or some other crime, correct?
Are you talking about a side holster that's holding a revolver, like a Smith & Wesson?
The side holster was withdrawn. I'm talking about the side holster that you wore.
Yes, they have a clip. The
Correct?
side holster.
Right. And that's the side holster that you practiced with Trudy Doyle with the gun, the Mauser. No? You had two side holsters?
No, the holster that I had for the Mauser was a waist holster. It's the kind of a holster that you often see detectives wearing, where it even looks like it's in the waist.
I don't know what I often see. Why don't you testify, okay?
It's a holster that clips on to the belt, and it can be clipped either inside the belt or outside.
And that holster has a clip in it too, doesn't it? Yes or no?
It's not the same kind of a clip.
But it does have a clip with some degree of pressure to prevent that gun from being taken out from even a detective, doesn't it?
Yes, sir.
So in fact, on December 1st, when you say she tried to take this from your waistband, that was an attempt at something that she had never tried before because the practice was when you wore it in a holster on the waist, correct?
That's
right?
correct.
Now, in addition to being a firearms expert, you would have to go, standard procedure, to the range and practice firing your weapons, correct?
Yes, at least twice a year.
Okay, and you would, well, isn't it a fact that as an expert and you trained people, you have to go there more often to maintain that level of expertise?
I'm not sure exactly what the rules were. I had attained a level. I went more than twice a year.
Okay. And in doing so, you would practice not only with your service revolver, but you would practice with your Mauser, right?
Sure.
Of course. You have to know how that operated, right?
Sure.
Right. And could you show the jury, if you don't mind, the police stance when trained to fire a weapon, in firing a weapon?
There are many stances.
Could you show them withdrawn? When you fire a weapon at the training ground or in any other situation, you fire the weapon with two hands?
Generally.
Yes. And the Mauser has a certain amount of recoil on it. You heard the testimony on that, right?
Most guns have recoil.
Correct. And recoil is when the gun kicks back after you fire a bullet, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the Mauser kicked back, you heard that, right?
But the Mauser kicks back very little in
15
comparison.
degrees. Would you agree with that?
Sure.
Okay. And it kicks back even if you held it with two hands, right?
It kicks back somewhat, but very little.
After firing the gun at a firing range, withdrawn, when you go to the firing range with that Mauser and you fire the weapon, it would kick back a little, right?
Yes.
And in order to fire it again, you'd naturally bring the gun down and point and fire, correct?
Sure.
Because if you fired it after a kickback, it'd go up in the air, right?
Sure.
Okay. Even when you held it with two hands, it would be a kickback, right?
Somewhat.
And is it fair to say that if you withdrawn, is it fair to say that after accidentally firing this weapon on December 1st, that since you weren't even ready for it to fire, it kicked back far more than when you were ready and prepared on the firing range practicing with that gun?
I don't remember how much it kicked back at that moment.
You weren't ready for it to fire then, right?
No, I was not.
Your muscles weren't ready for that gun to be fired, right?
That's right.
You weren't trying like you do in the pistol range to hold that gun steady, right, with two hands.
That's right.
It accidentally went off, and certainly the recoil mechanism wasn't any different than any other day that you fired the gun, right?
That's right.
Is it fair to say that it must have thrown your hand back more than on the pistol range, more than just a little?
It threw my hand back.
You remember that now?
It had to.
Okay. And do you really suggest that it didn't throw it back any more than it did on the pistol range?
I don't know how far it threw it back.
Even though you weren't ready for it to be fired, right?
That's right.
By the way, the gun you described as a light trigger pull, and you heard the expert describe it, I think, as a medium trigger pull. They talked about pounds and things like that. Do you know what the term a hair trigger means?
Sure.
Could you tell the jury?
A hair trigger is a pull that theoretically all it would take would be a human hair touching it in order for it to go off. A hair trigger is practically no effort whatsoever.
And then the Mauser, the gun, people's number one in evidence, that took some effort, whether it be light or medium or 10 pounds or whatever. It took some effort. You actually have to pull the trigger to fire this gun, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, getting back to your relationship with Trudy for a moment. You met her in about September of last year, right?
Yes.
And you very quickly found yourself falling in love with her. Is that fair to say?
That is.
I mean, so quickly that you proposed marriage to her, correct?
I did.
So quickly that within a month you wanted her and persuaded her to live together with you, right?
I wouldn't say I persuaded her. It was a mutual decision.
Well, the fact is that you proposed marriage to her and she didn't accept that proposal, right?
That's right.
In fact, you were never sure of her feelings towards you. Quite sure, right?
I wouldn't say never.
Often?
There were times.
You gave a statement to the police the very day that you were arrested after the shooting death of Trudy Doyle. Do you recall that?
Yes, I did.
And that statement was made at about 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, correct?
Yes.
That would be sometime 10 hours, 11 hours after Trudy died.
Approximately 24 hours after I had last had any sleep.
Move to strike is unresponsive.
Last portion of the witness's answer is Stewart was unresponsive.
You're a police officer. You were a police officer, correct?
Yes.
You've testified at trials before, correct?
Yes.
You've testified as a witness for the state before, correct?
Yes.
You know how a witness is asked questions, correct?
Yes.
You know what a response to a question properly is, don't you?
Yes, I do.
All right. When I asked you withdrawn, when you spoke to the detectives at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that was about 10 hours after the death of Trudy, correct? 9 hours after the death of Trudy.
Approximately.
Fair to say?
Yes. Yes.
There was time enough during that period of time for you to collect your thoughts. Is that fair to say?
I wasn't able to collect my thoughts.
Move to strike. That wasn't the question.
It was an answer, Your Honor. Excuse me for not standing up, Judge. That was a fine answer.
I withdraw my objection. You weren't able to collect your thoughts after 9 hours, correct?
That's right.
But there was time enough if you had been able to collect your thoughts, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And there was time enough for you to think over what happened, correct?
There was time.
Did you think over what happened?
Sure.
Is there something different in thinking over what happened from collecting your thoughts that you had a problem with?
Will you let me answer?
I asked you, is it different? You can say yes or no. Is there something different? I'll let you answer.
No, there's nothing different.
And when you spoke to the detectives, you spoke at length, didn't you?
Yes.
In fact, you've seen your statement, several typed pages, right?
Yes, I have.
And there was a stenographer there taking it down as you spoke, correct?
Yes, there was.
Much like there's a stenographer in the courtroom today, correct? Taking everything down you're saying today, right?
That's right.
Okay. And did you say during that interview that you could never be certain about Trudy's feelings? Did you say that?
That's what I said.
Okay. Was it true then?
It wasn't quite accurate.
Okay, because as you've testified today, you weren't. There were times you were sure and times you weren't, right?
That's right.
Okay. And you've had more time to collect your thoughts since December 1st.
A lot more.
Right? You've had more time to deliberate and think about what happened that day, right?
Yes, I did.
Now, after you left, spent 6 years in the Marine Corps, is that right?
That's right.
And I forget what rank you rose to. You rose to the rank of?
Sergeant First Class.
That's a fairly honorable and high rank, is it not?
Something I'm very proud of.
And when you left with an honorable discharge, correct?
Of course.
And you left to pursue a dream, is that right?
Yes.
You left to pursue the dream of helping and protecting people, correct?
Yes.
And that dream was fulfilled by you becoming a member of the New York City Police Force, is that right?
NIDA.
Were you New York or NIDA, Judge?
NIDA.
Oh, okay. NIDA City Police Force.
That's right.
And that must have been quite a feeling of accomplishment as well for you.
It was wonderful.
And do you think you were doing a good job as a police officer?
I know I did.
You got commendations?
Sure.
Had no problems on the police force, correct?
I was a very good officer.
Okay. And your marriage at some point failed, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But you still maintained a close relationship with your children, is that true?
No, that's not true.
Did you maintain as close a relationship as you were able to?
As close as I could, yes.
You loved them, correct?
Of course.
You cared for them, right?
Yes.
Okay. And in September of last year, you fall in love with this person you think is the woman of your dreams, fair to say?
Yes.
And she's going to fulfill your life, right? You hope.
I had hoped so.
You hope. You're now in the job of your dreams, right?
Yes.
You're doing it well.
That's right.
It's got to be icing on the cake for you, right?
It was very satisfying.
And you're in love with this wonderful woman, right?
Yes.
And it's this wonderful woman, and which one? This wonderful woman that you wanted to help, I believe you said, and to help her to become stronger and more independent, correct?
That's right.
Okay. Now this wonderful woman that you were in love with, she had already left a marriage with a wife-beating drunk, right?
That's right.
She was living alone on her own, correct? Up until moving in with you, she was living alone, right?
No, she was living with another waitress for some point before then. I don't know.
She had a roommate?
Yes.
Okay. The roommate wasn't caring for her. She was living at an apartment and sharing it with a roommate,
they were just
correct?
roommates,
Okay.
sure.
She had a steady job, correct?
Yes.
You're shrugging. Did she have a steady job or not, Mr. Diamond?
It was a steady job.
She worked every day, right?
Every night.
She earned a living, right?
Barely.
Did she earn a living?
Yes, she did.
She earned a living. She lived in an apartment by herself, supported by no one, had a steady job. She maintained a relationship with someone who loved her. She left the marriage with a wife beater, and you were going to make her stronger and more independent. Is that your testimony?
Yes,
or
it
no?
is.
You're in the job of your dreams. You're doing it well. You're getting commendations. You're earning accomplishments there. You never want to do anything else after leaving the Marines.
Excuse me, Your Honor. The
There's gonna be a
procedure
question.
normally is to ask a question.
It's going to be a question, Judge. This is a question.
That means that one asks.
Forgive me,
of course,
Mr. Kennedy. I didn't make
subject,
speeches to the jury. I appreciate you
question
not
mark
to.
at the end.
Mr. Kennedy. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. You're in the job of your dreams, which you're doing well and accomplishing good things, right?
Yes, sir.
You're in love with a wonderful woman,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
You hope she'll marry you.
Of course.
You're living together.
That's right.
You're getting commendations.
Yes, sir.
But you're running off to California to start a new life because it's not going well for you. That was your testimony, right?
That's right.
Now, these plans that you made to go to California, you say that you made them, we're going to leave for California with or without Trudy Doyle, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. But it's a fact, and I think you said it already, that your hopes and dreams were that she would leave with you, right?
Of course I did.
And up until December 1st, the date of her death, she never told you she was going to go with you.
That's right.
She never acted in a way she was going to go with you, right?
That's right.
She didn't pack any of her belongings, correct?
She did not.
She went to work after your resignation on the 28th of November, correct?
Yes.
She was at work the day you were checking out of your job and packing your equipment, right?
Right.
She was at work as you're getting ready to leave California, right?
Yes, she was.
But your hope and dream is that she's going to finally say to you, yes, I'll come with you. I love you, right?
I certainly hope that.
But the fact of the matter is, you knew she wasn't going with you in the depth of your heart, didn't you?
No.
Excuse me, Your Honor. What time?
On December 1st, 1997, you knew before you ever spoke with Trudy Doyle that she wasn't going to California with you. Didn't you know that?
No.
She had a 2-year-old child that she loved and adored, correct?
Yes.
Now, at some point you began training her with this gun, right?
Yes, I
You
did.
began training her with judo, correct?
That's right.
And when you were in the house, when that gun was in the house, it was always unloaded, right?
Only after we started playing the game where she would grab it from my waist.
Well, you had been playing that game for at least a month with her, correct?
I couldn't say the exact.
I didn't ask you for exact. I said
I don't know if it was a month.
3 weeks?
Could have been.
Several weeks?
Yeah.
Okay. So for several weeks prior to the death of Trudy Doyle, that gun was in the house, and it was unloaded, right?
Yes.
And in fact, you gave her that gun as a gift, right?
That's right.
You gave her your off-duty pistol, the Mauser, People
Yes.
Someone, right? And you never went and bought another off-duty gun, correct?
That's right.
Okay. Now, and it remained with her until, as you told the jury, you took it back. I think it would have been November 27th, correct?
That's right.
November 27th, Trudy returns from the hospital, and you decide she can no longer have possession of this gun, and the first thing you do is hide this unloaded weapon, right?
Well, no, I hid a loaded weapon.
So some point between the time it was unloaded and you were playing with her and gave it to her as a gift and the time that you decided to hide it, you loaded this gun. Is that right?
The gun, yeah.
And so in order to protect Trudy, who you were fearful of might do some injury, either self-inflicted or otherwise, with this weapon you didn't know, she came back from the hospital and you hid this weapon and kept it loaded, right?
Yes.
When you played the game with her of snatching the gun where you weren't concerned that she might commit suicide or intentionally do injury to somebody else, then you unloaded it to protect from an accident, correct?
Yes.
When she came home from the hospital and you thought she might intentionally injure someone, specifically herself, then you had it loaded, right?
It was no longer her gun.
But it was in the house. You hid it, right?
Yes.
And you kept it loaded, right?
As it had always been, before I even met her.
Before you met her, it had been loaded, right? Which one? Up until November 7th, it had been her gun, right?
You say up until. I had only given it to her barely 2 weeks before then.
Okay. So for the prior 2 weeks before November 22nd, you had given her a gun which was unloaded, correct? I just want to make sure. Is that correct?
She had the gun, she had the clip, she had the bullets.
You know, you heard Benbrook testify, did you not?
Yes, I did.
Is he correct that while Trudy was lying dead in that vestibule and you were in the police car, that for the entire time that you were in that police car and she was lying there on the vestibule floor, up into and through the time that the coroner came and examined her body, is it true you never glanced over there? That's what Sergeant Benbook said. Do you recall that?
I recall him saying that,
Yeah,
but
he testified to that. Is that true?
I don't remember.
Now, the operation of this Mauser, just to be clear, you indicated before that you, in order to fire it, you must undo the safety and cock it. Is that correct?
That's correct. Actually, there must be a round that's already chambered.
So you have to chamber a round, correct?
Sure.
Cock the trigger, correct?
Yes.
And undo the safety. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. Now, by the way, you demonstrated it as I'm demonstrating it now, correct? In front of the jury. The jury can see me, thumb on top of the gun, hand outstretched, somewhat in a fist position, correct?
Yes.
In fact, the safety's on the side, so you have to turn your thumb to the side and slide the safety back, correct?
Sure.
And then you have to turn your finger up on top, your thumb on top of the gun and pull the trigger back, correct?
Not necessarily in that order. You can pull the hammer back first.
Either way, it's two separate actions, correct?
Yes.
One on top of the gun, one to the side of the gun, correct?
Yes.
Right. Now, 2 days earlier, 2 days prior to Trudy's death, you handed in your resignation, right?
I think it was 3 days.
November 28th?
Yes.
3 days, you're right. November 28th, you hand in your resignation, you're going to California, right?
Yes.
You're going to stay with a Marine buddy, is that fair to say?
Yep.
And December 1st is your last shift, correct?
Yes.
Now, on which one? On November 28th, you take the gun out of the house and bring it to your locker, correct? The Mauser.
Yes.
And on the last day of your shift, which one? On your last shift of your last day, December 1st, 1997. It's a very different day for you, right?
Yes.
Fair to say it's your last day on the job of your dreams, right?
That's right.
It's not an ordinary day.
That's right.
There's nothing about you cleaning out your locker and you leaving the job of your dreams that has anything with any other similarity to every other working day you had at the police force, correct?
That's right.
You packed up your entire personal belongings in a flight bag. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
There was nothing. What did you clear out of your locker?
I had a radio. I had
Which one?
some.
Which one? There was nothing ordinary or habitual about clearing out your entire personal locker in the police department on December 1st,
That's right.
1997 at 5:30 in the morning.
That's right.
There was nothing habitual about doing that, correct?
That's right.
And when you put the gun in that waistband, that wasn't out of habit either, was it?
Yes, it was.
In fact, you used to carry the gun in a detective's or waist holster. Isn't that correct?
That's right.
Out of habit, when you wore that off-duty revolver on the days that you wore it in a holster, correct?
That's right.
So when you put that gun in your waistband, that was also something out of the ordinary for you, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, that gun, when you took it out of that locker, was loaded, wasn't it?
Sure.
There was a round in the chamber, in fact, correct?
That's right.
You hadn't worn that off-duty gun since you had previously given it to Trudy Doyle as a gift. Isn't that correct?
That's not true.
You remember this typed statement that you made on December 1st, 1997, approximately 3 pages of typewritten material? Do you remember that?
I remember my statement. I've read it.
You read it? Of course, in preparation for this trial, right?
I've read the statement.
And would it be fair to say that that statement is fairly detailed about your activities both before December 1st and through December 1st and the death of Trudy Doyle? Would that be fair to say?
There's detail, certainly.
And you speak in detail about the gift of the gun to Trudy Doyle, right?
I speak about it, yes.
You speak about in that statement about the practices you had with her trying to snatch the gun. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
You speak about hiding the gun, right?
Yes.
You speak about putting that gun in your locker, hiding. I got a while, Judge. You speak about putting that gun back in your locker on November 28th, right?
Yes.
You speak about putting the gun in your waistband as it's loaded on December 1st, right?
Yes.
There's not one mention in this report of you ever again, after giving that gun to Trudy Doyle, ever carrying that gun as an off-duty revolver. Isn't that right?
There's no mention, that's right.
Thank you. The fact of the matter is, what you did on November 28th was you took that gun, you brought it to your locker, and you left it there for 3 days, and you took it out on December 1st, right?
No.
You go with that gun in your waistband, loaded with a gun in the chamber, to the diner at 5:30 in the morning, right?
Yes, sir.
When you get there, she finishes her shift, withdrawn. Trudy Doyle finishes her shift the same time you finish yours, right?
Approximately.
You regularly meet her there and you have coffee or breakfast, right?
Sometimes, yes.
On that day, you're leaving for California, right?
Yes, sir.
You're leaving the job of your dreams. You're leaving your children. You're never going to see them again, right?
Of course I'd see them again.
You're going to be 3,000 miles away. How often do you think you'll see them, Mr. Diamond?
How often was I seeing them now?
Mr. Diamond, when you moved 3,000 miles away, how often did you think you'd see them?
About the same I was seeing them now.
Which is zero?
At that point, which was hardly ever.
Okay. So you basically gave up on them, in your mind, to move to California, right? Am I right?
No, sir. I did not give up on my children.
And what you're doing, what you're hoping, what you're praying for, is that this woman is going to go with you. Isn't that fair to say?
Sure.
She's the woman of your dreams.
Sure.
And you go into that diner, and you sit down all by yourself, right?
Yes, sir.
And you sit down, and a gun is in your waistband. You don't move it out of your waistband as you sit there, right?
That's right.
And you sit there for at least half an hour, right?
About.
She's talking with the gals in the booth, right?
That's right.
You don't go up to her, right?
No.
You don't let her know you're there, right?
That's right.
You don't know if she knows you're there, but you think she looked at you, don't you?
I thought so.
Okay. And you're sitting there. And the woman of your dreams, she don't even give you a smile, does she, Mr. Diamond?
That's
yes
right.
or no? And you see her, and she's going to the vestibule, and you think, she's leaving. She's leaving.
That's right.
She's not even saying hello to me, right? Right?
That's right.
Not even a goodbye to me, right?
I wasn't sure she even saw me.
But you thought she did, right?
I wasn't sure.
You thought she did, right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
And she's walking out without even a goodbye. The man who saved her life, right?
That's right.
The man who loved her, was going to make her strong, independent, right?
Yes, sir.
She's walking out the door, right?
Yes, sir.
So you run down there or you walk quickly to the vestibule, right? Right?
Yes.
And when you get to the vestibule, you're a big man, you're over 6 feet tall, 200 pounds, right?
Yes, sir.
You stand in front of the one and only doorway back into that restaurant, right?
That's right.
And you see when you get there, she's not leaving at all. She's buying a pack of cigarettes, right?
Right.
Excuse me. And the door shuts behind you, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you know, while you're in that enclosed vestibule, nobody can hear what you're saying, right? Do you know that?
I never gave it a thought. I have no idea.
You know, when you're in that enclosed vestibule, that nobody can even see what you're doing because you're a big man and blocking the view from everybody in the restaurant, right?
I never gave that a thought.
You recall giving that statement back on December 1st, the one where you couldn't collect your thoughts,
I might have.
You might have what?
I gave the statement.
And in your inability to collect your thoughts, your inability to think, your inability to deliberate, you were able to say specifically, page 39, Counselor.
I'm sorry, Judge. My dog ate my copy of
You may
transcript.
You may ask your question.
Thank you. You said this. This vestibule was between the door to the street and another door leading into the restaurant area itself. This latter door was glass and shut behind me, so I doubt anyone could hear what was being said. Also, my back was to it, so anyone looking in would have a hard time seeing what was happening. Do you remember saying that on December 1st, 1997?
Yes, I said that.
That's something you never gave any thought to, correct? Yes or no?
No.
You just said that, right?
Gave any thought when? Could you please tell me when you're talking
I
about?
didn't ask when. When I asked you it 1 minute ago, I didn't point to any time in your life. You said you never gave it any thought, correct?
At that time when I was in the vestibule.
I didn't ask you then. I asked you today.
That's what I thought you were asking. I thought you were asking me if I gave it that thought when I was in the vestibule. Obviously, afterwards, I realized that, of course, no one could see me.
Because you had 9 hours to sit in that police station, collect your thoughts, deliberate, and tell that to the detectives, right? Yes or no?
Yes.
Now, as you confront her, you say, withdrawn. Are you going to California with me, or are you coming to California with me? One moment, Your Honor, with your indulgence, and I will wrap it up shortly.
You're reading my mind.
It's been 15 years. I should be able to. You say that she told you, no, you're not?
That's right.
The fact of the matter is, what she said to you was, no, I'm not going, correct?
No.
When you spoke to the police on December 1st, you told them what she told you was that she said she's not going, correct? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Objection, Your Honor. Should refer to the
It's
statement.
been answered, Your Honor.
Should refer to the statement.
I don't have to refer to the statement, Your Honor. He has
You
answered
should
that. That's what
refer
he
to the
said.
statement when you
You're not-
misstate the
Mr.
statement as a
Kennedy,
matter.
there's a reason
My dog
God
hadn't eaten
created
my statement. I'd be able to correct
What
it.
I'm thinking, Mr. Kennedy, you don't.
Very well, Your Honor.
That's the last time I'm warning you.
All right.
I didn't ask you what was written in the statement. I asked you whether you told the detectives that she told you you weren't going, and you said that's what you told them, right?
I thought you were
Yes or no?
referring to the statement.
But you don't have it in front of you. I asked you, are you making things up as we're going along?
No.
All right. So I asked you a simple question. Did you tell the detectives on December 1st whether or not she told you she wasn't going? And you said, yeah, that's what I told them, right?
That's what I said.
Is that true? Did you tell them that?
I believe I did.
So she didn't say, no, you're not. She said withdrawn. She said, no, I'm not going, right?
No.
She never told you she wasn't going to California
She said,
that day?
no, you're not.
But you didn't tell that to the police on December 1st, correct?
That's correct.
Now, on direct examination, am I correct that you said she then grabs, by the way, at this moment in time, with finality, you know she's not going with you to California, right?
That's right.
Is it fair to say that in that moment you were crushed?
No.
Weren't you heartbroken? Yes or no?
I was disappointed.
That's it? Another bad day at the track? Withdrawn. She grabs for your gun out of your waistband. That's your story, right?
Yes, sir.
And in one motion, this is what you said on direct examination, in one motion, you hit the gun upwards and you grab it and it went off, correct?
Yes.
You grabbed it in one motion at the same time you hit it upwards, fair to say?
Yes.
And the bullet that was fired off that one motion as you're grabbing it went and struck Trudy Doyle in the chest.
That's right.
Well, I guess you must have grabbed it and turned it around. Is that right? Because the gun had to be facing her, right?
The gun did turn around.
As you grabbed it with your judo training or martial arts training, you grabbed it in one motion, were able to turn the gun around, it pointed at her chest, and it went off accidentally, right?
It was my arm
Yes
that
or
was
no?
in one motion.
Excuse me?
It was my arm that was in one motion.
You said on direct examination that in one motion you hit the gun and grabbed it, didn't you?
Yes.
And it went off, right?
Yes.
And that trigger had to be pulled to go off, correct?
Yes, sir.
Not a hair trigger, right?
That's right.
Did the gun go flying up in the air?
It did actually fly up about several inches.
Oh, wait a second. So you didn't hit and grab in one motion. You hit it, the gun flew up in the air, and then you grabbed the gun,
But
right?
my arm, which was in one motion, it was my arm that I was talking about that was in one motion.
Mr. Diamond, you have now said on 3 prior occasions that you hit and grabbed it in one motion. Is that testimony inaccurate or incorrect?
Slightly inaccurate.
Even when you were asked on the non-confrontational questions by your lawyer, Mr. Kennedy, when you said that it was incorrect, right? Right? Right?
Somewhat.
Somewhat. It couldn't have been one motion. You knocked it in the air and you grabbed it, right?
The arm was in one motion.
But
I was
the grabbing...
talking about my arm.
Wait. And the grabbing, was that a different motion?
It was all part of the same motion.
The grabbing was one motion and the arm was one motion?
I hit her arm, and as the gun popped out of her hand, my arm continued and grabbed it.
As it flipped around...
Yes.
And pointed at her?
Yes.
And your... How tragic it was that not only were you able to grab this flying gun, but you grabbed it in a way that you actually pulled the trigger accidentally, right?
That's right.
And incredibly enough, the gun wasn't fired accidentally into the floor or into the glass or into the ceiling. It fired right into Trudy Doyle's chest. Correct?
That's right.
Now, when she was holding the gun, was it in her right hand or her left hand?
It was in her right hand.
And when you hit the gun, was it with your right hand as you just demonstrated?
Yes, it was.
And that was with an upward motion?
Yes.
And did the gun go flying, fairly straight up? Would you say?
Sir.
Well, did you hit her hand straight up?
The gun obviously went up because I was hitting her from underneath. Straight up?
Well, did it fly off to her right? Did it fly off to her left? Do you remember any of this at all? Or do you think this might cause problems with your story if you give me a direct answer to that?
The gun went up, sir.
How did it go up? It went up only a few inches, you said, right?
It seemed so.
Unluckily enough, not above your shoulders so anybody could actually see that happen in the restaurant, right? You know nobody saw that, right?
I know that.
Because as fate would have it, when you struck it, it only went a couple inches, so your body still blocked what anybody could see, right? Right?
That's what happened.
And when you grabbed it, we know that that first bullet entered the left side of her chest, right?
I'm not sure where the first bullet entered.
You saw the medical examiner, right? You saw him testify. You saw the charge. Did you see that?
I couldn't understand the medical
You couldn't understand it? Do you remember the testimony about Trudy's wristband? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Do you remember the testimony that there was material from the wristband that was in the right side of her chest?
Yes.
From a bullet, right?
Yes.
Do you remember that after Trudy was struck with that first bullet that she let out a scream and grabbed her chest?
Yes.
So isn't it a fact that the only possible explanation for the material, the metal from her wristband, in the bullet wound on the right side of her chest was from the second shot after she covered her chest?
I don't know.
You don't know that? Is
I
this
don't
too
know.
complex for you? You're a police officer. We're a police.
I don't know that, sir.
Well, let's take it step by step then. How do you think? Am I done?
Rome.
After, am I still going? I'll be done in 5 minutes. 5 minutes, 5 minutes. The gun recoils after that first shot, right?
Yes.
And after the recoil, amazingly enough, your body tenses up with all your training, and it goes off again, and it doesn't hit the wall, it doesn't hit the glass, it doesn't hit the floor, it goes into her chest.
That's what happened.
Are you the guy who told her if anyone is going to kill you, I am?
Yes, I am.
The fact of the matter is, officer, that you were living in a dream world, this dream of a new life with Trudy, right? My last series, right?
No, I wasn't living in a dream world. No.
You knew if Trudy was going to break your heart, you were going to blow hers out, didn't you?
No.
You cleaned out your locker and you loaded that gun. Right?
The gun was already loaded.
And chambered with a bullet, right?
The gun was already chambered.
You put the gun in your waistband. It was
Yep.
loaded. Correct?
Yes.
Might have even been cocked, right? You don't even remember.
It might have.
Do you leave that gun in your locker cocked or uncocked?
Generally uncocked.
Right. So you must have cocked it if it was cocked before you left that precinct that night on your way to see Trudy, right?
If it was cocked, I did it.
Right. And then you must have uncocked it according to you, right?
That's right.
After sitting for 30 minutes, the woman is walking out of your life and you go and confront her, right?
Yes, sir.
And you confront her in the one and only place in that restaurant where you know nobody could see what was happening, right? Because you're blocking their view, right?
Where I know now or I knew then?
Then.
I didn't even think of that.
And you knew then that nobody could hear it after that glass door shut, right?
I wasn't thinking of that.
Right. And then she rejected you, right?
No, I didn't say
She said she's not going with you, right?
That's right.
And you did it. You did it. Because the only explanation, Mr. Diamond, is that you did it and you pulled that gun and you shot her straight through the chest. Bang. Bang. Right?
No.
No further questions.